This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. A cattle market update from Tyler Cozzens and Brandon Dodd at the Livestock Marketing Information Center begins today's show. They discuss what cattle on feed pre-report estimates are and price trends for the industry. K-State Agriculture Precision Specialist Deepak Joshi keeps the show moving as he explains different types of drones and what producers should consider before purchasing. A segment of Faces in Agriculture with Leigh Ann Pfannenstiel from Logan County ends today's show as she shares about Red's corn maze and pumpkin patch. That and more is coming up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Monday show with the cattle market update from the director of the Livestock Marketing Information Center, Tyler Cozzens, and agricultural economist at the Livestock Marketing Information Center, Brandon Dodd. Tyler, Brandon, I appreciate you both taking the time to join us today.
Thanks for having us on. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Brandon, wanting to hop into the cattle on feed report, a report we didn't get, however, you have some pre-report estimates for us.
Yeah, so the October cattle on feed report was scheduled to have come out on Friday last week, but because of the federal government still being closed, we do not have a cattle on feed report this month. There's been some looming questions about whether we will get this information, at least at some point. But so far, the sentiment we've been hearing is that the longer the shutdown continues, the harder it's going to be for the USDA to go back, release past reports, and also generate the new and current reports. So all to say, the longer the shutdown, the more unlikely we'll see information backfilled, the October WASDE report included. This isn't to say that we're not going to get the information. These types of things can turn with the flip of a coin, but it's something people should be bracing for. Now, while we do not have the report and the official statistics themselves, we at least have some idea of where expectations were for on-feed inventories based on pre-report estimates that get put together by analysts all over the U.S. According to analyst expectations, the October 1 on-feed inventory was forecasted to be down about 1.9% on average. This would have brought the total head count to roughly 11.4 million head on feed. There is a degree of uncertainty, however, so pre-report estimates also come within a range. For total on-feed numbers, that range was between down 1.6 to down 2.6%. On-feed numbers were forecasted down due to fed cattle marketings and placements also being forecasted down during September. Placements were expected to be down on average by 8.6%, marketings by 4%. Placements had a range of down 6 to down nearly 12%. Marketings were in a tighter range between down 3 and down 7%. To review some of why analysts' expectations resulted in the way they did, I'll walk through a little bit of why that is, and a couple of variables that we consider here in the office. So on the placement side, one are auction receipts on feeder cattle. There is more of a breakout that you can kind of sift through on auction versus direct versus video receipts. There are also some assumptions about when some of those cattle may actually show up in the feedlot. But really the takeaway is that receipts were overall down nearly 12% in September. If you consider the possible contribution that these feeder cattle auction receipts have on placements, historically during September months, they can explain about 60 to 68% of the cattle that end up moving into feedlots. So a pretty significant chunk. This leads me to my second major piece, which is trade. The U.S.-Mexico border is still closed as New World screwworm is still a problem. This means we still don't have those feeder animals that otherwise would normally contribute about 4% to the number of cattle that we see placed in feedlots. So together, these major factors produced that bias of down about 8.5%. On the marketing side, what was really different here was that we actually had an extra slaughter day in September this year compared to September of last year. But because daily slaughter reports of fed animals moving through plants showed cattle down near 4.25%, marketings were still forecasted down. Seeing that pullback in marketings despite the extra slaughter day really suggests that feeders are holding on to these animals longer. So basically they're extending that feeding period as we've seen now for the last couple of years. Outside of that, what's really disappointing about not having this report is the fact that we're not getting the quarterly estimate of heifers on feed. This is especially difficult because one of the largest questions on everyone's mind is when we're going to see producers start rebuilding the herd and increasing heifer retention. Not having that value does kind of help produce a little bit more uncertainty in an already uncertain environment. In July, we saw heifers accounting for about 38% of all cattle on feed. You can also look at this as about one heifer for every 1.6 steers in the feedlot. In prior quarters this year, we saw some reductions in heifers' contributions, which is promising for expansion conversations. But given we can only work with what information we have available, there's the possibility that we're going to have to look for other information as answers to these questions in the event we don't get these values in the future. So overall, while we do not have the official report from USDA, the general consensus across analysts is that cattle on feed numbers are down. Feedlots are stretching limited inventories to keep pens filled. And as long as we remain in a government shutdown, there may be some gaps in the data that are just a little bit harder to explain.
As we're looking at our current cattle prices and cattle and beef price trends, Tyler, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so kind of seeing some interesting trends start to develop here, specifically looking at kind of the steer calf and feeder price trends here. So kind of want to discuss some of that, just kind of overall looking at weekly feeder cattle prices. What we're seeing is a continued trend of higher prices over the last several weeks here, which is signaling some of these prices or some of these supplies are remaining tight. So digging in a little bit more to some of these price dynamics, kind of specifically comparing prices to a year ago, there appears to be somewhat of a wedge forming between the prices this year compared to last year. And what I mean by that is prices are moving higher when we would expect to see some of these prices seasonally moving lower as we kind of get into this fall run of cattle. So let's discuss a couple of these examples here. So looking at 400 to 500 pound steer calf prices, specifically in the Southern Plains, so kind of think Kansas and Oklahoma area there. They're actually $519 per hundredweight last week. That's actually an increase of about $197 per hundredweight, or about 61% from the same week last year. And so kind of back in July, though, comparing those prices, they were actually up about 30% or about $100 per hundredweight. And so that bigger spread that we've seen in the last few weeks highlights this wedge that we're kind of seeing as far as development in prices here, which is seeing kind of a strengthening of prices that is forming compared to last year. Additionally, here on the 500 to 600 pound steer calf prices, those were actually $462 last week, and that's actually up $172 per hundredweight, or 59% from last year. And similarly, looking back in July at those prices, we're actually only seeing a price of increase of about 25% to almost 30%. That's about an $80 per hundredweight increase compared to a year ago. Similarly, highlighting that wedge that is forming between prices. Now, looking at those feeder cattle prices, those 700 to 800 pounds steers, those are actually approaching about $400 per hundredweight, with last week's price was actually $393 per hundredweight, which was an increase of $138 from last year, about 54% from last year. And similar to some of that discussion back in July, prices were actually up about 25% or $70. So we're seeing that wedge continuing to increase even on the feeder side of things. So kind of a quick note in some of that discussion here to kind of bring this point to home here is prices for calves and feeders. Last week's prices, just to highlight this, were actually all record high. So moving forward, we're seeing this wedge increase in these prices will likely fluctuate, but that wedge continuing to increase is signaling these supplies remain tight in the cattle sector. And kind of some similar discussion here on the cattle side of things. Looking at the fed side of things, on a live basis, steers and heifers were actually almost $240, just a couple cents under that last week. That's actually up about 2% or $5 to almost $6. On a dress basis, they were $372 per hundredweight last week. That's up about 3% or almost $10. So we look at those comparisons compared to a year ago. That's up about 28% on the live base and 26% on a dressed basis. Looking over at the box beef value side of things, actually up about 2% on that end too, hitting about $371 last week. A lot of that strength is being driven by the chuck, round, and loin. Seeing a little bit of pressure on the rib, slightly on the brisket and flank, but overall seeing a stronger cutout value as we kind of move through this fourth quarter of this year.
Tyler, we've recently had some major headlines in the beef and cattle industry, and any thoughts on those?
Yeah, so I think it's kind of one of these things that we have to keep in mind, that there's always kind of these looming uncertainties in the market that can have some impacts there. I think kind of some of the things to specifically sort of discuss here would be the potential of more imports from Argentina on the beef side of things. And, I think we have to keep in mind, that, we have tightening supplies of beef here domestically. And, Argentina has been a supplier of beef to the market. But I think there's a lot of global dynamics at play here that we have to consider. One of those specifically being exchange rates. And also just does Argentina have the supplies necessary to sort of make any impacts in the market? I think there's a lot of discussion that can be had on that. But I think there's quite a few dynamics at play there. And I think one of the other things we have to consider here is, as far as recent news discussion, is the encroaching New World screwworm, and just the discussions that are happening regarding that. It's definitely knocking on our southern border there. But, as far as market dynamics go, so far no reports within the U.S., but I think there's always that concern. We have to keep an eye on that. And some of the discussion that I had as far as prices go, those could be one of those factors that could pressure those prices as we get through towards the end of the year here. And so we have to consider those just from potential market dynamics and implications to just overall prices in the cattle sector.
Tyler, Brandon, I appreciate you both taking the time to join us today.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
That was Director of the Livestock Marketing Information Center, Tyler Cozzens, and Agricultural Economist at the Livestock Marketing Information Center, Brandon Dodd. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be right back. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our show discussing different types of drones that can be used in agriculture with K-State Agriculture Precision Specialist Deepak Joshi. Deepak, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Sylvie, for inviting me today.
Deepak, if we're thinking about our agriculture producers and maybe they're thinking about buying a drone, what are some things that they need to consider first before they even go for selecting a drone?
Nowadays, drones are so popular and everybody wants to buy, but there is always a concern that there are so many drones available in the market. So which one to select for my farm and for my purpose, actually. So it depends on so many things, actually. So it depends on what we want to do and how large area we want to cover. So there are so many different drone type as well. Like we'll discuss on each drone type in more detail a little bit later. But multi-rotor, fixed wing, hybrid, and also we have operational drone as well. Like if we want to use the drone for the spray purpose and seeding purpose, so we have to buy some other different type of the drone which have a higher payload capacity. So it's completely depend on what we want to do. That's our main, based on our main objective, we can decide and buy the appropriate drone for our operation.
You mentioned multi-rotor and fixed wing, and can you explain to us those two different types of drones a bit more?
Multi-rotor and fixed wing are very common drone used in the agriculture. So more common is multi-rotor because they are small in size and they have a rotor, like they look like a helicopter. And depend on the drone brand, but they usually have a 4 to 6 rotor in each drone. And they are really good if you want to fly over the small area. Like I do have a multi-rotor drone for my work. And whenever I have a small area, like I have to cover 30-acre, 40-acre field, I usually do the multi-rotor drone. And they are easy to operate and they can hover around certain specific area. So for example, if you have a corn field, and if you think there is some problem on certain area of the corn field, so you can hover around the drone on that area and get the image, and based on that, you can identify what is the issue over there. So these multi-rotor drones have the hovering capacity as well. And also, they don't need a very large area for takeoff and landing. For example, we can fly this up and down vertically. So they need a small area for the takeoff. And from the multi-rotor drone, we get a high resolution images. compared to the other drone actually. So they give more detailed information about our field actually. And another drone is a fixed wing, which will look like a small aeroplane, and it have a wings actually. That's why it look like an aeroplane. And the benefit about this drone is it cover larger area. For example, I do have a fixed wing drone as well. So I fly farmers field. If I have a 150-acre quarter section drone, if it's a nice day, I can cover 150 acre in a 30 to 40 minutes actually. So it's a really good actually. And another benefit about these fixed wing is they can handle windy day as well. Compared to the multi-rotor, these are more stable during the windy day as well. And third benefit is their battery, because when we talk about the drone, battery is important. So battery life, these fixed wing have a greater battery life. So the drone I have, fixed wing drone I have, its battery lasts for even one and a half hour. I can fly continuously 1.5 hours if it's a nice no wind day actually. But on the multi-rotor, usually the battery doesn't last much compared to the fixed wing. So battery usually, if it's a nice day, 30 to 40 minutes is the maximum battery on the multi-rotor. So these two drones are very commonly used, and can be applied used in the agriculture for various purposes actually. And we have a third drone, which is called hybrid, which is the mix of the both actually, multi-rotor and fixed wing. So it can cover a small area as well, because it has a rotor, and it look like a helicopter as well, and it can hover around certain specific area as well. And it have a wings as well to cover larger area. So it have a feature of the both actually, multi-rotor and fixed wing, both features. So that's why it's called a hybrid. That's why its name is a hybrid. But these are not that very commonly used actually, because of some technical complexity. These are not very commonly used in the agriculture. But multi-rotor and fixed wing are very commonly used in the agriculture.
You mentioned that multi-rotor can be smaller in size. So what are some size comparisons, or how small or how big can these drones get?
I just get the new multi-rotor yesterday. So it's a brand new multi-rotor, which is about, I think diameter will be like around 1.5 feet. And the fixed wing is a little bit bigger because of the wings actually. So it's around like 2 to 3 feet. But their weight is important compared to the size. But their weight, I think I do have both drone less than 55 pound weight actually. That's as a legally we need to have that below 55 pounds. So it's below 55 pounds.
Is there a difference in speed?
Multi-rotor usually are slow compared to the fixed wing. That's why they cannot cover larger area actually. But the fixed wing are really faster, and they will cover 150 acre within a 30 to 45 minutes. So that's another. And fixed wing also, they fly high compared to the multi-rotor. And that's why they cover larger area very quickly as well.
Deepak, as you've commented, you've flown both the multi-rotor and the fixed wing, and is one easier to fly than the other in your opinion?
Nowadays, drone technology have been improved a lot actually. So every new year we have a new feature in our both multi-rotor and fixed wing drone, and they have improved a lot actually. And now both are easy to operate actually. So I start my drone journey back in 2017 with a fixed wing. That time I used to fly fixed wing drone, and that need a big launcher actually. So I had to carry big launcher, and I have to set up that launcher in the field, and then after I had to fly. But nowadays, even the fixed wing, the technology have changed a lot. You don't need a launcher. You just make the flight plan in the computer, and you can make automatic flight plan. So it's not a manual. So you just upload the flight plan, automatic flight plan in the drone, and it will automatically fly. You just need to throw with the hand actually. So it will automatically fly and cover a whole field. So because of these new changes and improvement in the technology, I think both drones are easy to operate nowadays actually. So I operate both, and both are very easy to operate nowadays. But comparatively, slightly multi-rotor consider little bit easy compared to the fixed wing.
What are a few of your favorite features you've seen in drones?
The best feature I like is automatic flight plan, actually. So that's a really great feature. So automatic flight plan means you just create the flight path of the field where you want to fly in the laptop or your phone, and you can connect that flight. It will fly automatically. So you can just sit down on the corner of the row or the field, and you can just watch, and it will finish all the field automatically. So that's a one best feature I like. And there are so many new safety features available on the drone. For example, if there is any electric pole or big tree around the field, so they have a new feature of the object detection, and they avoid the obstacle automatically as well. We don't need to worry about those things now. And also they have a geofencing feature as well. So geofencing means, for example, if you have a 150-acre field and you don't want your drone to go beyond that 150 acre, you can just draw the boundary when you make the flight plan. So because of this geofencing feature, your drone will never go beyond that boundary, actually. So you don't have any chance for losing the drone as well. So these features are really new features that are very helpful for operation. And some other feature like a terrain detection, that means like a big field, they have a landscape variation. So based on the within field landscape variation, this terrain detection feature will adjust the flight height as well. So if you have a hill part of the field, so it will adjust based on the terrain detection, and it will adjust the flight height as well. So there are so many multiple good safety feature on the drone nowadays.
And Deepak, if someone is thinking about buying a drone, is there a little bit of licensing they need to take care of as well?
For the legal operation of the drone, we need to follow all the rule and regulation by the FAA. So for the legal operation, we need a drone pilot license as well. So for that, we need to pass the knowledge test exam. So only after passing that knowledge test exam, you will be granted a drone pilot license, and then only you will be able to fly the drone legally, actually. So this rule is for both drone, fixed wing or multi-rotor drone or spray drone. So this rule will apply to all types of the drone, actually.
Deepak, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Selby, for inviting me today. Thank you.
That was K-State Agriculture Precision Specialist Deepak Joshi. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be right back. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we conclude our Monday show with another segment of Faces in Agriculture. And this week we're joined by someone involved in agriculture in Logan County, Leigh Ann Pfannenstiel. Leigh Ann, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. My family and I last year opened Red's Corn Maze and Pumpkin Patch in Logan County. When I was younger, we did corn maze, but it was like we cut it all by hand. My dad said never again. And then I begged him promptly for 18 years to do it again. And then I found that there was technology. So we do precision planting on our farm in Logan County. And I found out that you could make a maze. Really cool. So we have over 10 miles of maze. This year's theme is the Wizard of Oz, and it covers 16 acres right next to our farm.
So what is the picture in the corn maze this year?
So because it's Wizard of Oz, we have all of the main characters. So we have 4 different mazes. They're called Tin Man's Travels. So it has the Tin Man in it. The Yellow Brick Road has Dorothy and the Emerald City. The Wicked Way obviously has the witch, it has the lion, and the scarecrow. And then our shortest maze is Toto's Trails, and it has Toto on it.
What have been some challenges for getting Red's Corn Maze and Pumpkin Patch going?
Honestly, it's just been a learning curve. So from the very beginning, just learning the technology, learning how we want to host people. It's probably the people side, but even more than that, we took an old barn and we renovated it. and by we, I mean my dad, but I found a grant for it. We fixed up an old barn. And honestly, that was probably the most work. We cleared out 4,000 pounds of junk like that had been left over when we moved in. We had to build new doors, paint everything. So just figuring out logistics so that we had a place we could host people to walk through on their way to the maze. So that's been the most challenging, and to keep growing and making sure that we do something new every year.
What have been some important keys to success or kind of getting this part of agriculture for your family up and going?
I think our favorite part of the maze is watching families go through together. Last year, like I said, was our first year, and it's happened again this year. People were thanking us, and we were like, I don't understand. But in Western Kansas, there isn't always the opportunity to experience agriculture in a new way, or for people not directly involved in agriculture to experience it. And so I love watching my dad answer questions. People are blown away. How do you get 10 miles of maize planted in corn without any weeds? My dad loves to share that the crop is about the same because all of our trails get more sunlight. And so most of those corn plants have 2 ears of corn rather than one. So we don't really lose out on crop because we still harvest it. That's really what it's there for. So I think that it's been one of the keys is just making sure that we have included as much education as we can. And half the time people don't maybe know that they're learning something, but always walk away knowing a little bit more about how we harvest. And then we do field trips, and my mom does a STEM lesson. So this week alone, we had over 300 students come through for STEM lessons. So then they go through the maze, they learn about Kansas crops, things like that. So it's been cool. I think that is an important part of what we do, is teaching students and also just like neighbors about farming and how technology is so included in the work that we do every day. It surprises most people.
If people are interested in finding out more information, how can they do that?
Best place would be our Facebook page, Red's Corn Maze and Pumpkin Patch. We do a lot of posting there. Our hours, we're open every weekend in October, Saturday and Sunday. And you can see the full maze. We have a video of it there, as well as the maps are all posted there.
Leigh Ann, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
That was Leigh Ann Pfannenstiel, who's involved in agriculture in Logan County. I will link their Facebook page in today's show notes on agtoday.net. That's all we have for you today on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more for you tomorrow.